David is the president, CEO of Global Automakers of Canada. David, good to have you with us. Your take on what Stellantis is doing?
Well, it's obviously very disappointing, I think, for Canada and especially for the workers in Brampton, but it's not entirely surprising given that that plant had been on hold for the production to be allocated there. I think, if there's any hope to be taken from this announcement, it was the indication, I think, that Stellantis referenced that they did still have plans for Brampton. I think if you want to try and put a bit of I guess, a bright light on things. Having that much investment, I think it's $18 billion going to the United States by Stellantis, that should help certainly Canadian and Ontario parts suppliers, but it's obviously disappointing for the workers in Brampton, and not only the workers in the plant, but obviously the larger community, the supplier community around it, and those around the facility that whose livelihoods depend on that plant.
What sort of leverage do you think Canada actually has here, David?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think the reality is that we maybe don't have a lot of cards in our hand, but I think we do have a few cards, and it's important that we play those cards well. And I think the one factor that I'm sure has been raised in some of the discussions between Prime Minister and the President and Minister LeBlanc and perhaps Howard Lutnick is the fact that Canada really is one of the sole places where American vehicles are sold. Indeed, 40% of our sales are American-built vehicles here in Canada. So I would like to think that that statistic holds some suasion over some of the dialogue that's taking place in terms of how we move forward in terms of landing some sort of trade agreement here.
I wonder if you can clarify something. When the plant is down, as the term goes, and that was the case for the past 18 months or so with this plant since January 2024, what does that mean in practice, David, related to the original 3,000 workers who at one point did work at that plant in Brampton?
Yeah, I mean, this is not unheard of in terms of whenever a new model is going into a plant, whether it's any one of the 5 different manufacturers here in Canada. There's usually a period of downtime, as you say, for a number of months as the tooling gets modified or altered. Other tooling is installed and whatnot to produce a new model. This was perhaps a bit of an overly long, lengthy time for a model changeover, but it was, I think the intention at the Stellantis plant in Brampton was to move to an electric vehicle production, and that obviously, has been challenged. The whole EV issue has been challenged by, again, actions that have been taken by the Trump administration and also by consumers' reluctance to necessarily purchase EVs in the same volumes that had been expected. So these down periods are not unheard of, but this was a little bit more of a lengthy one. But the workers that are in the facility, they would be, my understanding is my 2 members are not unionized, Honda and Toyota, but my understanding is that those union workers would be compensated through employment insurance when they're in that down period.
One last question, David. The Prime Minister has talked about ongoing conversations with Stellantis about the future, looking for other opportunities for the company in Canada. Stellantis has already said, look, we added a 3rd shift to our plant in Windsor. We are still committed to the Canadian auto sector. What next? What does all that mean?
Yeah, well, and who knows what it means, but I think the important point is that, as you said, there's still dialogue ongoing between the government and the company, and I think that dialogue needs to continue. And I can envisage that some of that discussion would be around what else can Canada, Ontario put on the table to entice the automaker to put more production into Canada, and what the terms and conditions that might look like. But I think it's a challenge for the Prime Minister. He's going to be bringing down a budget on November 4th, and it's already been characterized as an austerity budget. So in terms of putting more money on the table for the automotive industry, and in the context of an austerity budget is challenging. But I think the Prime Minister is also well aware of the economic importance of the automotive industry, and it's the second largest export industry in Canada, and not one that is easily filled by some other industry. So he needs to do whatever he can to ensure that we keep automotive production here in Canada.
David Adams with the Global Automakers of Canada joining us today from Owen Sound in Ontario on this story. Thank you, David.
Thank you.